Good evening. It's good to see you. So this is a wonderful text that we want to talk about tonight. And we will see in it three major R's here, to rejoice and to remove and then to remember. So this is something that teaches us about what we ought to be doing if you're young. So that includes, see anybody here? No, but that's us. That's pretty good. And if you get smart aleck with me, I'm going to show you something at the end of this. All right. So anyways, this is just the best of the best, because all of us want a design and pattern and direction in our lives, something to base ourselves in, something that we can look at and say, here's the directions on how to live. And I think above anything that you could possibly see in Scripture, this does about as well as it can in a short period of time. So really excited about looking at this with you. All right, so let's look at this great text here, how to live life. And I'm putting an emphasis on live, how to live life. And of course, you're aware of these words, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. All is vanity. Vanity of vanities. He starts his sermon with this in chapter 11, verse 12, verse 8. He ends the sermon with this. And as Adam so aptly pointed out, we tend to look at that and think of that and hear those words and say, oh, sounds so depressing, sounds so hopeless. Vanity of vanities. It's even more hopeless if you're reading the NIV or most other versions. NIV says meaningless, meaningless, meaningless. Everything's meaningless. And then the New American Standard and Net and Christian Standard Birdie, futility of futility. Everything's futile. I am actually not really happy with these translators because other translations make a note of that and point out that the idea here, first and foremost, is not it's useless, futile, wasted effort, wasted time, and all of that. Everything is a vapor. Everything is fleeting as we live life on this planet, whether we live it without regard of God or with regard of God, under the sun or above the sun. Everything is fleeting. Everything is like a vapor. It appears for a little while and vanishes away. Interestingly enough, the New American Standard Version translates the word futility all the way through the text until, lo and behold, it comes to chapter 11 and verse 10. And New American Standard says, for youth and the dawn of life are fleeting. Why did they do that? Well, because they got to that word and go, you can't say youth and the dawn of life are wasted, useless, futile. That isn't true. Exactly. Neither is it true in any place else that you rendered it that way. Always blows my mind. So the only Greek I know is a guy who sells sausage on the corner, but I'll tell you what, that's wrong. That's just not the way that does. And you can read just about any commentary and they're going to point that out. They're going to say the same thing. I'm not unusual in that at all. But remember, when we're reading vanity, you need to think in terms of that which is transitory, that which is fleeting. And this will make a lot of difference on how you hear the book. So other versions, as I said, are meaninglessness and futility, etc. But when you look at 11 verse 10 and he says child and youth are vanity, you realize, wait a minute, he's not saying that your upbringing and how you grew and the whole period of time that you're young is just a big old waste. Well, that's not true at all, and he doesn't believe that. That's not what he is saying. So the idea here is this, that finding joy and pleasure under the sun, ruling out seeking God, ruling out placing God at the center of your life. If you don't place God at the center of your life, then this whole attempt to fill yourself with joy and pleasure that is lasting and some profit is really going to be a waste of time. You are going to be chasing the wind. You're not going to catch that. That's not going to happen. Solomon, in all his glory, as the Lord would say, was unable to catch that and be able to do that. So we need to see that from that point of view. Live under the sun and you have nothing that's permanent. Live as God is number one in your life. As you participate and enjoy life in any kind of way that is godly, you are going to find true joy. And it'll be permanent. And it'll be everlasting because God is at the center. And so that's the idea of the text. And the second thing that is important here in this is the preacher doesn't ever say or mean that you can't find joy and pleasure in this life. That's not true. You can. In fact, this text that we're looking at tonight is really notable to point that out. As Alan read, did you see how many times he said rejoice? You know how many times he mentioned that and pleasure and light and all kinds of good things that he mentions? Yes. The preacher is telling us there's a way to enjoy life that is very, very important. And that way is not living life under the sun in the sense of ruling out God. It is including God in your life. And that is the key. In fact, chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes, verse 24 and 25 and 26, he actually says to those who serve God, they are the ones who get pleasure and joy and wisdom and life. So he's told us that over and over again. And so just as Adam said, I don't want you to ever read Ecclesiastes and say, well, I don't know what I'm doing. It's just mumble, mumble, grumble, grumble. That's definitely not what it is. So this is the message of our text: how to find really joy, pleasure, and life. We can do that. We can live that kind of life, and we need to do that, because if we can't, what are we trying to share? Hey, join me as a Christian. We're all miserable. Not so. Not what we want to do here. All right, so let's look first at this introduction. We talked about verses 7 and 8 in the previous lesson, but there's a couple things I did not mention that I think are important here. And the first thing is, you notice his positivity in this. Light is sweet and it's pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. The idea is that he's already mentioned all these uncertainties in life. So one of the things that messes us up, isn't it? One of the things that messes us up is we don't like knowing what's going to happen, not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. And we know there's all these seasons that come. Tomorrow could be horrendous. Today could be great. It's like the weather and all that. And we can get very, very frustrated. He says, don't do that. Trees fall. That's the way it goes. Clouds come, clouds go. That's the way it is. Don't get messed up with that, and don't let these uncertainties discourage you or get you sad. Instead, look at the light. Look at the sun. It's great. It's beautiful what God has done. So please consider. Hebrews 1:3, the Hebrew writer says that Jesus upholds the universe with his hand, with his power. You go to sleep at night, why do you wake up in the morning? I mean, you're unconscious. We are unconscious to everything that's going on in the world. And somehow, and I've been doing this for a long time, it drives me cuckoo no matter when I go to sleep. At about 5:45, I'm awake. Here we go. Let's get with it. All this. And so what wakes us up? What causes us to sleep? What causes when you wake up and your sun's coming up and you say, wow, the sun's coming up? Because Jesus is making the sun come up. Because Jesus is upholding everything. He is the one who is doing that. That's something to rejoice in. That's something to be amazed at. Look what he's doing. He's bringing us light and life. It's a beautiful idea that that God is giving us. In fact, in John 1 and verse 3 and 4, he says Jesus is light and life for us. He brings it. So it's a metaphor for all the great things that God is doing. It reminds me of the wilderness when God always had the pillar of cloud in the day and the fire at night to light the way, telling them, I'm here, I'm with you, I'm bringing you along the way. And by the way, this is really not only metaphorical, it's an actuality. Depression was pretty high during COVID, wasn't it? It was rampant. People are throwing themselves out 10-story windows. I mean, it's awful. Why? You ain't seeing the light, dude. Get outside. Kind of depressed? Get outside. Get active. Do something. Get in the sun. Feel. That will help conquer anxiety and pressure. So it's true in both ways. Our heart and our soul needs that, and God knows that we need that. And this then is now his beginning of talking to young people, and it's just simply the best of the best. So he starts with the first star: rejoice, O young man, rejoice in your youth. And that alone is so interesting because in this particular case, I think young people have often thought that being a Christian, you just can't have any fun. You can't have enjoyment. It's not about that. It's not about having some enjoyment and having pleasure and things like this. That's not what he says in this text. And as a matter of fact, this passage in 1 Timothy 6 is true of all of us. And he says, Paul said, do not set your hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. So when God gave all these things, he didn't throw them out there and go, it's like throwing a beautiful chocolate cake that'd be made by one of my daughters-in-law, which is actually phenomenal. I think she could win prizes, and put it on the table and say, nobody gets to eat it. We're just going to let it rot. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to mush my face in it. It's too good. This is fantastic. The world God they made is beautiful, and there's pleasure and enjoyment that God has made and placed in the world. And that's good, and that's okay. And God wants us to enjoy that. And you notice those words, walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes. At first you look at that and you say, you mean just do what I want? No, I don't mean just do what you want. I mean in the sight of your eyes. Be wise, but enjoy. Find things that you can enjoy. That's terrific. But in the middle of this, there is a strong warning. And that warning then, of course, is that God is going to bring all these things into judgment. So you're measuring your life, you're evaluating your life in this judgment. I would suggest there are two main things you want to obviously be aware of. The first is just pretty simple, straightforward. You are not going to enjoy life if you participate in sin. It's God bake that in to life. Participate in sin, and you're not going to enjoy life. Oh, as the Hebrew writer said, you could have a pleasure for a season, for a brief time. You can say, oh, that's a lot of fun, but it's going to destroy you. It's going to be all downhill. So don't get involved in that, and you will never see the preacher suggesting that anybody should get involved in that to try things out. So that's not there. But the second one is more subtle. Don't do things that are going to weaken your spirituality, that are going to weaken your desire and love for God, because that's what keeps you above the sun. And it's very, very easy to fall into an under the sun type of lifestyle. So there's a critical balance there, and you can see, just in thinking about that balance, you can see I'm going to have to be pretty careful, because a lot of the things that God has placed in the world are really enjoyable and fun, and that's okay, but I can't let God get subject to those desires and those things that I'm doing. So I would suggest two considerations here, especially when you are considering life from here on. And the first one is, if you're young, you're going to be pursuing a career. Just about everybody does that if you want to eat and live, and that's great. But here's your warning. There are lots of careers. They're going to swallow up your life, going to swallow up your time. They're going to make it so you cannot give yourself to your family, to your wife or husband, or be able to give yourself to God as you should. So there's a tremendous caution there. There's a lot of course, careers that you can look at that and you say, wow, that is just the best of the best. But then stop. It may make you a lot of money, but the money isn't going to make you happy. If you lose your spouse, your children, and your salvation and your God, because you put so much into some kind of career, and it was forced upon you basically, though you happily took it because it's too much fun, and you've got forced into it, and that's what you're doing. You lose those things, and you've lost everything that counts. And you will be miserable. You will be absolutely miserable. So it is a very, very dangerous thing. God tells us in Ecclesiastes earlier, chapter 9, that what your hand finds to do it with your might. But he started that whole text with God. God is your number one. And that is very, very important to consider. The second thing is, in enjoying recreational activities can become very addictive. They are fun. And some of them are fun, especially when you do it a lot and get good at it. Careful. Then you start crowding out. In America, recreational activities are one of the biggest idols we have. And if you don't believe it, watch how people take their children and center their entire family with this 9-year-old that is playing soccer and is really good at it, and so we're going to travel weekends and spend all this time and money, and everything is centered on this child, and you ruin him forevermore because he thinks he's the center of everybody. This is dangerous. I've watched many kids and families fall apart because of the overemphasis on recreational activities. It is a tremendous idol, and parents get their my son is doing thus and so. And I had coaches constantly beg me to let my son get on the traveling team. And I said, no, we're on a traveling team. We serve the Lord, and it's a traveling team, and this is what we're going to do. Well, can he go to church twice to make up for missing yeah, that doesn't work. I'm sorry, this is not a work system. But I had all those things said to me. So those are very, very important things then to consider, and we can't let the glitter of the world to bring us in that. Second R, remove vexation from your heart and put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. So take a look at the definitions here. Vexation is translated a number of different ways: pain, sorrow, troubles, anger, worry, anxiety, emotional stress. He says very broad in how that is defined and translated. Pain is very similar. In the Hebrew, it indicates troubles, calamity, disaster, evil, wickedness, anything that is harmful. So there's lots of things like that. Now, there's just absolutely no sense in a young person living miserably because of their own actions. Now, somebody else may do something to make you miserable, but it ought not be because of the choices you're making. This is a great time in life. Enjoy. And that's what the preacher is saying. You need to get rid of those things. Get rid of anything that is going to cause you pain, stress, anxiety, suffering that isn't within the bounds of the way God wants you to live. Be very, very careful in this. So these kinds of things are significant. And you say, well, how do you remove them? I say the first thing you do is you pay attention to cause and effect, as is pointed out in the book of Proverbs. Book of Proverbs teaches us. You do this, generally this is going to happen. You do that, generally this is going to happen. So you walk in the paths of the Lord, generally things are going to be well for you, and you're going to prosper, and you're going to be happy, and things like this. You don't do that, and generally speaking, you are going to eventually bear the consequences of the lifestyle that you have determined to live. And so make decisions to understand. Maybe you need to talk to somebody. Maybe you need to read Proverbs very carefully. Read Ecclesiastes. But figure out what causes these bad things to happen. So when pain and sorrow and troubles and anger and emotional stress start taking you down, look at yourself first. That's the first person you need to look at. Am I making decisions? Have I made decisions that brought me to this place? Some people, and I've done a lot of counseling with people in this category, over and over again, year after year, come to me and go, "Oh, this is happening now," and it's happening because you won't change your life. You keep making dumb decisions. Well, this and this and this. Look, I won't do it. I was going to just rebutton my shirt so it's cockeyed. How am I going to fix a shirt that I started buttoning wrong? I got to unbutton the whole thing, start at the right place. And people have gotten themselves in a mess because they haven't started in the right place. The right place is God. Start with the first button. If you don't start there, everything else is going to fall apart. So quit whining and follow God. Now, there's going to be trials and difficulties and things, but it won't be because you did it. Why do you want to multiply pain in a world that already has pain, even without you making bad decisions? Learn to make good decisions. And that is a major problem within this country, and unfortunately even with people who are Christians. So final little thing there on the second R. The youth and the dawn of life are vanity. What's that mean? Don't waste these beautiful years. They are going to fly by. They're going to be gone before you know it. They're going to end quickly. Right now, you have an opportunity to enjoy something, a period in your life that has some opportunities, that those doors will soon close very rapidly. Choose wisely. Choose wisely these opportunities that you have. So there is his picture, is very, very important. Third R, remember your Creator in the days of your youth before the evil days come. So again, if you're young, you may not understand the full significance of this particular exhortation. I know it sounds like it's right there on the surface, but there's some things to be considerate of here as you look down through the future. And why is it so important to remember God in the days of your youth? And I would suggest there's a number of reasons that is true. In your early years, in these early years, you have the most desire, you have the most energy, and you have the most time in order to make choices. And you need to do that now, figuring out what is right and what is the good and how to live that in a proper way, because things are going to change. Once you get a little older and you have a family and you have other things, if you do that, or whether you do or you don't, trials in life begin to build. Things become more difficult. You know, we always look back, those of us older, we look back at teenage years and go, oh, I wouldn't want to live those years for nothing again. And that's right, I wouldn't. Because I was confused and I didn't know where to go, and nobody taught me hardly where to go. Just enough to know, serve God, and things will eventually work out. But these are important days, and they're going to end. So take advantage, again, of that. Secondly, in youth, you set the course of your life. That's where you set the course. You think, well, I'll come back to God pretty soon. That is a big, fat laughter. You know why? Because there's a couple of things how that works. Here's God's path. You're heading down the path and you go, I'm just going to go over here. And as you go, you get further and further away from the right path. This is the way it is. And you don't really notice it. You think, oh yeah, I think that path is still over there. I can go back. You have no realization how deep your heart goes when you get in sin. It is far deeper than you ever believe. Even if, well, I still go to church. Yeah, well, so what? I mean, really, so what? You're living in sin out here. You're doing what you want to do, and you do not realize how deep you're getting. I'm always shocked, in some of the common sins in our country, the sexual sins, the pornography, and all the things like this. And people think it's so harmless. You are corrupting something God made, and I mean, I don't even have an English word to tell you what you're doing to your head. You are corrupting it so badly that Paul says in Titus, you don't even know how to look at something and think it's pure. It is destructive. And you will get so deep and so far that you're going to say to yourself, I need to get back. And you won't be able to, because you will say, wait a minute, I can't think about anything else because I've given myself to this stuff. And I'm telling you, it's destructive. I had a wife of an elder that I'd known for 20 some years call me long after they had left the congregation where I was and gone someplace else, and she called me and she said, I don't know what to do about my husband. So what are you talking about? He has been into pornography since the day we got married. And I said, and you let him be an elder? You crazy? Yeah, and I can't get him to stop. That's right, you can't get him to stop. He's been doing it your entire marriage. Good luck. And it's incredible how deep this is. And somebody who has that little one-time affair and all these, you have no idea how deep that person has gone. You say, well, it's just no, it wasn't just you just fell 500 feet into a pit. And you will remember that sin that you thought was just a no big deal that you just briefly are going to get into, and then you're going to come back. You have no idea what you just did to your brain. You'll never forget it. You'll replay it 1,000 times, and you will hate yourself for it. I cannot emphasize this enough because it goes on all the time. It's a major, major deal in almost every church. Be careful. That's what his warning is. You set a course in your life that you cannot fix. Oh, you say I can get forgiven. Yeah, but you're not fixing your brain. You murdered it. You took a knife to it. It's a horrifying thing. Do not do it. Flee. Flee. That's what Paul teaches us. Thirdly, the sins of youth are a major problem of scarring your mind. That's what I was just mentioning. So I used to hear when I was growing up, well, you sow your wild oats a little while and you come to the Lord. Yeah, right. Again, you're further away than you think you are. And last, you have no guarantee you're going to repent. Because your desires for that which is wrong get stronger and stronger and stronger, and you keep trying to get more and more because you're getting less and less. Careful. There's no guarantee that you will ever come back. I've seen many people want to. They can't even get their brain right anymore. Be careful. So these are tremendous warnings. Remember your Creator now. No matter where age you are, get back with God. Make Him the number one point of your life. Give Him everything you have. By the way, you say, if I got that deep, are you saying I just never make it back? I'm not. You can. You've scarred it, but you can heal it. God can heal it. But here's the critical key. What will make you strong enough to overcome, no matter how powerful the sin is, what will make you strong enough to do that is to find a greater pleasure and a greater joy. In God, you can find a greater pleasure and a greater joy. And it will, you don't know pleasure until you've had the pleasure of God. You don't know joy until you found the joy of God. Teresa looked at me this morning and she was all disheveled and got out of bed and everything. She says, are you going to like me when you're 92 and I'm 80, you know? And I said, you are so gorgeous. I don't know what you're talking about. You know, the only reason you can say that is you're not comparing your wife to somebody else. She is everything. And that's because you focused where you ought to focus. You didn't focus on other women or other things or whatever else that is sinful and lustful. That's the way that works. And that is the way it ought to be, whether man or woman. You have no guarantee you'll repent. You have to be very, very careful with these things. Well, of course, when you come to verses 2 through 7, you have this fun metaphorical picture of old age and death. And it's it's great as we go down through this. I'll ask you to define it, okay? Let's have a little fun here. So he says in verse 2, the sun and the light and the moon, the stars are darkened, the clouds return after rain. As you get older, I'll just give you the answer to that one. As you get older, things start multiplying. You just get over one thing and here comes another one. You just get over another thing and here comes another one. In other words, the storm just keeps coming over and over again, and it starts wearing you down. And you go, my goodness, I go to the doctor all the time anymore. This is terrible. So that happens. And then you see in verse 3, in the day when the keepers of the house tremble. So what's the keepers of the house? No, not your mind. Yeah, your arms and hands start trembling. Okay? So arms and hands and stuff like this, so that they start trembling and things. So he's saying, yeah, that start happens. And then he says, and the strong men are bent, or the strong men, strongest muscles in your body, your back and your legs, they start getting bent. You start walking like this. You'll notice I'm not doing that yet. Okay. Watch it. Okay. And then the grinders cease because they're few. Teeth. All right. Good. And then those who look out the windows are dimmed. That's why a lot of us were wearing glasses. Cataract surgery they didn't have in those days. Poor Jacob, poor Isaac. They all started getting blind. There's a go. And then the doors of the street are shut when the sound of the grinding is low. Can't hear anymore. Don't know how that happened. Okay, can't hear anymore. And then he says, one rises up at the sound of a bird. So you can't hear, but you rise up at the sound of a bird. So anything wakes you up, You talk to the average older person, boy, yeah, how much sleep did you get last night? Whatever, things like that. And then he says, and the daughters of song are brought low. The ability to sing, maybe even the ability to appreciate singing, but yeah, you can't sing like you used to. Verse 5, they are afraid also of what is high, and terrors in the way. Yeah, you're scared you're going to break a hip. You're careful downstairs. You're like, oh boy, I'm going to be careful of this. And every once in a while I think, I'm going to jump off that. And I said, no, I'm not. So you get a little fearful of that. And there's terrors in the way. I'm not going downtown Nashville. Who knows what they'll do to me down there? We're getting all scared. And of course, the young people are scared of that, I think. Watch out. And then he says, and the almond tree blossoms. You're looking at him. So the almond tree, almond flowers are white. And so the almond tree blossoms. I'll admit that one. And then the grasshopper drags itself along. Stiff gait, right, of someone who is old. Get your walker out, all that. And then desire fails. I don't care about anything anymore. That was said of Barzillai, by the way, when we were reading 1 Kings, and David said, why don't you come and, or Solomon or David said, come and sit in my house, and all this kind of, he says, look, man, I got to the point, I don't even appreciate food anymore. I'm just, never mind, I'll just stay here. Do you think I'd get a kick out of some girls singing or something? I guess let me go home. It's very, very funny little mention there in that. And then he says, and because man goes to his eternal home and the mourners go about in the streets. You're almost dead in those days because they hired mourners. You can just imagine you're laying there, you look out the window, and there's all these mourners gathered. You don't even know them. They got hired, and they're just going to scream and loudly and moan because you died in order to emphasize that the family really loved you. I'm glad the American tradition is not to scream and wail for endless times there. Okay. And then before the silver cord is snapped and the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. All just different ways the body just starts failing, whether the head or the heart or the lungs or whatever. It all comes to an end, blows up, and then the dust returns to earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Now, after we've had a little fun with that and all that, and it is kind of entertaining to read that. But the preacher is dead serious here. I didn't catch up with all this. We've talked and I didn't get around this again. So we need to understand how serious the preacher is here. This is going to happen. And that's that. This is our future, and the preacher is saying, let me bring you to the final great reality. You are going to die, and your body's going to go to the dust, and your spirit is going to go back into the control of God. That's that. Now, how are you going to live? You going to live the way you want to live, or are you going to prepare for that? And you should think about that, whether you're 15, 25, 55, or 105. You need to think about that. You're about to face this. And the time is now. So remember your Creator in your days of your youth. It is so important. The Spirit goes back to God who made it. At that point, you no longer have control over your future. You no longer have control of your eternity. You had all kinds of control while you're alive here, but you do not have any more control. Then God is in control from that time on. And He will do with your spirit what God judges to do. So important to realize that. And then vanity of vanities. All is vanity. In other words, everything is going to fly by with incredible speed. It may feel like right now, will I ever get to the point where, and you have some goal, it will fly by. When was 1980? It was just a few weeks ago. Ronald Reagan became president. We all rejoiced. It was just a short time. It wasn't long at all. I don't know how we got here. It just pow. And I know you have heard people say that 1,000 times, and so did I, and now I know it. It's going to fly by. Make your decision. Get serious. Look, what is our life? If it's not for God, what is it? It is a big, fat waste of time and a destruction of eternity. What does it profit a man if he gained the whole world and lost his own soul? Jesus' words. Amazing, wonderful words. So, how do you live life? You rejoice, you remove, and you remember. Remember who you are. Put it on your fridge. That's the way it ought to be. Let's stand and sing.